All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. My name is Robert Winfree, and I'm your host. On the agenda this evening, UFC 273 last night. The good, the bad, the otherwise. Uh, yeah, that's going to be a lot of it. Then a preview for this upcoming week's episode. It's a little light. But you've got a relevant main event, a rematch between Vicente Luque and Belal Muhammad. It's not going to crown the next title challenger, but whoever wins that is going to be in a prime position. They're going to be a little bit undersold, but they're going to be in a very good position. And some of the news of the week, such as it was. I would get another relatively slow news week, all things considered. Mostly stuff in the vein of fight announcements, so we'll go through some of that. All right, before I get going, please do interact with the product. My usual spiel here: like, comment, subscribe. If any of that is at all relevant, a star rating if applicable, written reviews, any and all of that is always helpful. Thank you all very, very much for that, for the support that you continue to show the show. Not going to spend too much longer, any more time on that, but it's one of those things. You have to do it. Nobody likes it. I know. I listen to enough podcasts and whatnot. I don't like it, but you kind of have to do it. It's just everyone does it because it works, more or less. All right, let's get on to the action. We can get into things pretty quickly here. Last night, UFC 273. Let's start with the main event. That main event, man. Alexander Volkanovski, to the surprise of no one, defeats Chan Sung Jung to retain the featherweight title. He did so via TKO punches, 45 seconds of the fourth round. This was not close. Let me start with that. This was very, very not close. Volkanovski just effortlessly, it seemed like, the first two rounds just timed Jung very quickly, jabs, leg kicks, inside leg kicks, started getting a read with his right hand just over and over again. Was able to hit him and not get hit. Jung just did not at any point have an answer. It got a little bit worse in the in the second round. I mean, the stats on this thing are pretty nuts. Let's go round by round. We're looking at totals. Yeah, Volkanovski had a very high percentage. He was consistently landing north of 60% of his strikes. Anytime you are over 50, you're doing real good. When you get north of 60, I mean, understand from a statistical standpoint, just being over 50% means you should land more. Means you're going to land more than you miss. It goes from, I mean, if you play poker, for example, you know, the difference between a 55% to win and a 45% to win. Sometimes if you go head to head, you get those. The reality is the 55% guys should win. Now, it doesn't always play out like that because there's still a 45% chance you're going to lose, which is not trivial. But you cross that threshold from should lose to should win, or in this case from should miss to should hit. That makes a big deal. Makes a really big deal. Officially, and I might even think this is a slightly generous count for what Jung landed, the official significant strike totals at the end of the day, Volkanovski 138 of 213, 64% landing, versus Jung landing 48 of 125. And again, that might be a slightly generous count on 48. I mean, Volkanovski landed nearly 100 more strikes. That's an absurd level of dominance there. And if you go total, it actually doesn't get much. It actually gets worse for Jung if we go total. Total strikes, Volkanovski was 152 to just 51 for Jung. Just a thorough domination. yeah, again, it got worse in the second. Jung landed just 10 strikes in the second round. Uh, the third round is where Jung found more success. He still got completely blown out. Uh, he landed more in that round because Volkanovski started engaging with him for slightly longer periods of time. He had got enough of a beat on him to start ramping things up, and when he started ramping things up, Jung, by the nature of who he is as a fighter, was able to find a bit more success, but it was still an absolute blowout. I mean, Volkanovski landed 60 total strikes, 57 of them deemed significant. Jung landed 23. You're more than double the output. Like, if I'm hitting you more than twice as often as you're hitting me, I will take that every single time. Uh, then, I mean, the first two rounds were borderline 10-8s. The third was. I haven't seen the official scorecards for this one, but that third round should have. If you didn't give that one a 10-8, I don't know what to tell you. It was just. I mean, not only was he battering him, he upped the intensity. He wobbled him more than once. He dropped him at one point. The end of the third round. I mean, at the end of the second round, Jung went back to his corner and didn't even sit on the stool. He just sat on the ground. I mean, it was just a terrible, terrible tell on where a fighter is physically and mentally. At the end of the third round, I mean, even the commentary team, Paul Felder, I think, said it first. He said it pretty much as soon as the round ended. I'm not sure they should let him come back out. His face was busted up. He'd been beaten on the feet. He'd been out wrestled. I do want to give him credit, though. One of the things that Jung, I think, really benefited, he did some training for this one with Henry Cejudo's team, What Are They Fight Ready? And his takedown defense was it was at 50% officially, if you look at the statistics. That's still pretty good for against a wrestler of Volkanovski's caliber. And if you look at what he was doing technically, it was just a lot better than he's been in the past about that. So I do think he deserves credit for that. But he still was getting out wrestled, and just his leg was getting chewed up. It was just, there was not a whole lot. And so again, credit to Paul Felder and Rogan and Anik both agreeing with him. I don't know what the purpose is here. Jung decided he wanted to come out for the fourth. I mean, Herb Dean, who was the referee for this, credit to him in this case, he knew that fight should be stopped. Jung's corner wasn't going to do it because MMA corners don't do this. He got the doctor to take a look at Jung between rounds, and that doctor did the most useless thing ever. Looked at him and went, "Do you want to fight?" I know that being a ringside physician for combat sports is a difficult thing to do. You're trying to make medical assessments frequently when your opponent, when you're not opponent, sorry, when the guy you're trying to assess is actively lying to you. Can you see out of this eye? Yes, sir, I can see. How many fingers are you holding up? I'm going to take a guess. And if they happen to guess right, what are you going to do? Like, most fighters want to fight, and they will lie to the doctor about that. So, yeah, I get that it's difficult. It is kind of the story there. But if all you do as the doctor is come in, look at the guy, and go, "Do you want to fight?" I mean, you've seen this guy absorb, where are we at after the third round? 140 strikes, give or take? Yeah, something like that. Like, you've seen this guy get hit 140 times, most of that to the head. Yeah, 73% of that to the head if we go by the measurements here, which is kind of normal for Volkanovski. He does a lot of leg kicks, a lot of head work, and a little bit to the body, but not a whole lot. And the only thing you ask him is what his desire is. That's such a useless. That was just such a useless bit of examination. This is what we saw in the broadcast. Volkanovski comes out for the fourth round. They touch gloves, and he looks at Zhang and goes, "Are you sure?" Zhang, puts his hands up, so they keep fighting. Again, less than a minute later, uh, Volkanovski hits him with a right fairly quickly. Hits him with another couple that sent him staggering backwards. He doesn't go down, but the referee at that point just grabs Volkanovski like, enough. Uh, this was a. I mean, you can't say it was totally flawless, because totally flawless is I punch you once, you fall over, you never even touch me. But when you look at the total strikes absorbed he landed for this, again 51 total, which might even, again, I'd have to rewatch it and really take a look at it, but that might be a slightly generous. And even then, how much that was to the head? Yeah, Jung wound up landing to the chest area more than the head. In fact, he should have started doing that earlier, but that's a technical observation. I mean, this was a flawless performance. Like, this was, I think one of the commentators, I forget if it was Rogan or Felder, said this was a seminar. Like, that's what it felt like. That's what this was. This was just Volkanovski in every single phase of the game being an insurmountable distance ahead of Chan Sung Jung. It's rare in MMA that you see this. You see this more, especially in boxing. And there's a reason for this. Boxing is a very, and I don't mean this as an insult, mind you. I love boxing, believe it or not. Boxing is a very narrow discipline. You are limited in your targets. You can only hit above the waist. You can only hit the front of the body. You're limited in your weapons, and you're limited in elements of your application to them. Not only are you only punching, there's a pretty specific definition of punching. So when someone is the better boxer, it becomes very apparent very quickly. And it manifests itself because there's so little you can do differently. If you're on the losing end of things, there's a finite number of ways, and it's a real finite number of ways you can change the tide. And let me be clear when I say that. That doesn't mean, oh no, you lost one round, you're going to lose the fight. That's an overly simplistic reaction to what I'm saying. I'm saying if you watch enough boxing, you start to really see which guy, you can start to pick up on this. If someone doesn't have the skill, their heart becomes irrelevant. Now, most guys, even when they're on the losing end of things, you can see parts where they go even, or they don't lose by. They tend not to get completely blown out. And then the good fighters simply build on those successes. If you want an example of this, the Gennady Golovkin fight when he beat Ryoto Murata is a good example of this. It takes Triple G a while to get going, but once he does, it starts building and building and building. And it's very evident because, again, what you have to work with is so narrow. That's why everything has to be so refined. It's part of the beauty of boxing. It's not quite the same in MMA because your tools are so varied. Someone can lose badly in the striking department, but maybe they're really good in the clinch. So once they get things in there, the tide shifts. Maybe they're a really good wrestler. Maybe they've got lights out submission defense or submission offense or defense for that matter. If you're almost impossible to submit, that can really complicate the other guy's strategy. But there's just a lot of different angles. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can do this, and it's one of the reasons it's part of the reason, not the only reason, but it's a contributing factor to corners not being willing to throw in the towel. I think. Because in boxing, what are you going to do? Okay, maybe you're losing at distance. Maybe we can get on the inside a little bit more. Guy's got better hand speed, but you're starting to get his timing. There can be a bit of give and take there. But when you're just overmatched and it's obvious, there's not really a point to someone taking more abuse. In MMA, there tends to be a bit more of the, again, there's a lot of reasons MMA corners don't stop fights. But I think we'd be remiss not to include amongst these considerations that you can change the entire complexion of a fight, not with one punch, but by using a different strategy, by changing the terms of engagement in ways that you cannot in other sports. And which is all to say that none of that was in play here. It's kind of the long and the short of that. It's rare in mixed martial arts where you find someone this outmatched at every possible level. Okay, we all knew Volkanovski was the better technical striker. All right, fair enough. But Zhang couldn't induce a brawl, which is a skill in and of itself, and would have given him a better shot. Zhang couldn't fight more effectively in the pocket or in boxing range as opposed to kicking range. Zhang couldn't find success in the clinch. He couldn't take Volkanovski down. He was only 50% successful at stopping Volkanovski from taking him down. Like, there's no area, there's no singular facet of the sport where Zhang had an advantage. And it is very rare you see that in the UFC. It's very rare you see that at the title level. You can usually, even when you get the occasional mismatch for the belt, which happens, you can usually find an angle. You can find something. Here's something fighter X does better than fighter Y. If these circumstances occur, then the champion's in trouble. You know, I mean, you can take even the most dominant champions, and this becomes true of them. It's harder, especially for the very well-rounded ones, but it happens. And there was just none of that here. Like, Volkanovski was the biggest favorite on the card. He was -7 something, -700, so over 7-1 to win. And he made that look like it was underselling him when it was all said and done. This was not close. I mean, I said last week that I think if you go skill for skill, Volkanovski's the best fighter in the UFC. Maybe in all of MMA, and I stand by that. You can look at the other guys who should who are maybe in the discussion for pound. You've got Usman. I think Usman has a better body of work if we're looking at resumes than Volkanovski does. He's had a longer title reign. He's got a longer unbeaten streak, for whatever you want, a longer winning streak in the UFC. I mean, Volkanovski's overall winning streak is 21 fights. He has never lost at featherweight. He's never lost at lightweight. His only loss was when he fought a welterweight. And that video circulated a bit online last week? A week or 2 weeks ago. It kind of made the rounds. The size difference there is comical, and the crazy thing is, I imagine if they fought again, even at welterweight today, Volkanovski would school him. But if you're considering more body of work, then I can see the argument for Usman ahead of Volkanovski. If we're considering skills, like if we just go skill for skill, I'm going to reiterate, I think Volkanovski's better. I think he's a more dynamic wrestler. Let me phrase that very, very carefully. Usman's wrestling is a little bit inhibited by some of his knee issues, which he's been very open about. But that's why his takedowns tend to come from the clinch instead of dropping levels and shooting for a double. He's still very, very, very good. I'm not meaning to imply otherwise, but I think Volkanovski has a bit more dynamism there. If we're talking striking, Usman hits harder, yes. But rewatch some of the striking exchanges that Usman has gotten into, even under Trevor Whitman, who's done wonders for his technique. He still gets sloppy. Volkanovski never gets sloppy. Volkanovski's movement is better. His fake and feint game is better. I think Volkanovski has better ground and pound. Usman's not big on ground and pound. Um, he does more control. It's not that he never hits you, but he's more concerned about control, which is just a tactical assessment. That's not good, bad, or otherwise. But I think Volkanovski might finally start getting some votes as the guy at the top of the heap. Uh, as for what's next for him, one imagines they're going to rebook him and Max. I think it was Aaron Bronstetter I saw tweet this. That like the difference between the top of featherweight, you've got Volkanovski and Holloway. And the gulf between those two and the rest of the featherweight division, it feels enormous, doesn't it? I mean, Max beat the crap out of Calvin Kattar. He's a very good fighter. He beat Yair Rodriguez, and what I will maintain is Yair's probably most complete MMA performance. He's not just meme kicking the whole time. Still, Holloway beat him, no real questions asked. More competitive than I thought it was going to be, certainly, and Yair's had moments, but there was no doubt about who won that fight. Absolutely none. Who else is there? Get the rankings real fast. Have a quick look at that. I mean, if we go down the list real quickly here, you have champion Volkanovski, then Holloway at number 1. So Brian Ortega, beaten, battered, and bloodied by both Holloway and Volkanovski. Yair Rodriguez couldn't get by Holloway. Chan Sung Jung just got beaten by Volkanovski almost comically. Calvin Kattar's at number 5. Holloway beat the crap out of him. Arnold Allen and Josh Emmett are coming in at 6 and 7 respectively. Those two might be... There's some potential there. Allen just needs to stay active. He's a very, very good fighter. Emmett, kind of the same thing. Emmett gets overlooked a lot because his game is very kind of meh. I mean, he's got power, but a lot of what he does is very, very basic, very fundamental, very, very Team Alpha male circa 10, 12 years ago. And he makes it work for him, and God bless him. Giga Chikadze, who just had the setback when he fought Kattar. Bryce Mitchell sitting at number 9. But we have to get out of the top 5 to get away from people that have lost to those two. And realistically, would you favor Arnold Allen over either Volkanovski or Holloway? I'm not sure I'd favor him over Ortega, to be candid. Now, I'm not trying to push those guys ahead to the front of the line necessarily. Mitchell is due a bigger fight. He just had the win over Edson Barboza. So he's due somebody nearer the top. Allen just had a really good outing. He stopped Dan Hooker. So he's going to be due a pretty big one. So you've got a few guys who are coming up. But for the next year or so, is there anyone on that list that you look at and go, boy, they'd give Max Holloway a run for his money? That guy poses a serious threat to Alexander Volkanovski. I don't see it. Frankly, if they make the third fight between Volkanovski and Holloway, which I imagine they will. I mean, this was supposed to be this fight. And then that fell apart for weird reasons. If they make that third fight, Holloway might be slowing down a little bit. I mean, he went to war with Yair Rodriguez in some respects when he probably did not need to. And Volkanovski's getting better. Now that's that. As for Zhang, I think I broke my heart. Seeing some of his reaction to losing was just... MMA is a cruel, cruel sport because most of the time there is only the truth at the end of it. One of the things he said, and this did not go translated by his official translator, but a lot of people said it brought it up on Twitter. He said that now he knows he can't be UFC champion, which is, again, that's a brutal thing to realize. I mean, he fought Jose Aldo for the belt. Oh, man, how long ago was that? 8 years? I'd say it was 16, wasn't it? Might have been, or was it 13? I should know this. Hang on, I will find out. Yeah, 13, God. August of 2013. And he fought his way back to a title opportunity. And he had absolutely nothing to offer Volkanovski. And that's a bitter, bitter pill to swallow. So I don't know what he's going to do next. I don't know if he'll retire or not. He might just reassess his goals and decide he still wants to do this, but he got Jose Aldo did not beat him that badly. Brian Ortega, he lost to Ortega, but Yair Rodriguez, who knocked him out, did not beat him this badly. This is probably the worst loss of his career, maybe dating all the way back to when George Roop head kicked him at a WEC event. Like, we got to go way back to find a loss that is somewhat comparable to this one. So I don't know what's next for him. I mean, I have a lot of affection for the Korean Zombie, but he was outgunned everywhere. All right, co-main event. Did not agree with the decision here. Aljamain Sterling defeats Petr Yan via split decision, 48-47, so one of those for Yan, two of those for Sterling. I don't agree, but I am not up in arms. Here's the problem. Here's the thing about this fight. Everything about it comes down to one round. And that round in particular could legitimately go either way. So, that was the first round. Let's move beyond that for just a second. Round 2, things are mostly going okay for Yan. Then Sterling forces him to... Aljamain Sterling has such a weird game. He just... His wrestling... I don't mean to say his wrestling is bad, because that would be a wild miscategorization. It's good. It's very good. But it's predicated... Especially in this fight, he did not really try to get Petr Yan down in the traditional sense. He was trying to force a scramble where he could jump on the back, because if Aljamain Sterling is top of the heap, maybe in all of MMA, in a couple of things, his back taking is maybe the best in the sport. It is that good. And he tried... single leg switching into high crotches a couple of times, and when Yan was defending, he would wind up turning his back without proper control of the head, or he'd get off balance, not knocked over, but he'd kind of half turn trying to keep his footing, and Sterling just kind of jumped on his back. And once Aljamain Sterling is on your back, man, getting him off of there is a nearly impossible task. Yan couldn't do it. He could not dislodge him. So Sterling wins the second round. Some arguments were floated online for a 10-8. I saw some of the media members do so, and I understand the argument, but I don't agree on rewatch. I don't think that Sterling did enough under the criteria we're using. We're using the newer criteria. I don't think he did enough with the position to have warranted a 10-8. Now again, doing that live, I kind of thought, yeah, maybe that's a 10-8. Rewatch, no. It's a very, very, very obvious 10-9. And again, it's not that I'm not sympathetic to the 10-8 argument, but you rewatch it and it doesn't meet the criteria. Second round, more of the same. The second round was actually a little bit worse, I think. Because the second round... Yeah, no, it was about the same. I mean, in the second and third rounds, like, Sterling had 3.5 minutes of control time in the first, 3 minutes and 43 seconds in the third. Like, that's a lot of control time. Now, he had a couple of submission attempts, but nothing really got close. He had a decent flurry. I think it was in the third. No, second. He had a good flurry in the second round. But by the time we get to round 4, things start turning in favor of Yan. Yan starts stuffing the takedowns more effectively. He's landing more punches. Sterling's kind of struggling. Yan gets Sterling down a few times. I mean, Yan is credited with 3:51 of control time in the fourth. Fifth round, a lot more of that from Yan. He kind of shakes Sterling off of his back at one point. Sterling gets overzealous going for the back. Gets shaken off, and Yan just kind of beats him up. So the long story short there is the whole fight winds up hinging on the first round. A first round that featured Aljamain Sterling throwing a total of 41 strikes, trying 2 takedowns, both of which were stuffed. Yan throwing a total of 26 strikes. And if we look at their landing percentages, Yan landed 50% of his strikes, Sterling landed 47. Sterling threw not quite twice as many, but in total threw more, and technically speaking landed more. Spent the entire round backing up from Yan's pressure. And you ultimately have to decide this round based on the smallest of margins. As an end result, what are we left with? A near coin flip round to determine the entire fight. Doing it live, I scored it for Yan. But doing it live, I did not. I don't think I quite gave Sterling as much credit as I should have. That's on me. Rewatching it. I did rewatch this one, especially this round, because I really wanted to make sure I had my arguments nailed down for this. I still give it to Yan, for the record, even on rewatch. Rewatch made it much clearer how close that was. And again, if you give this to Sterling, I'm not arguing with you. I might have gone a slightly different way, but by the time we're arguing what we're arguing when discussing this round, we've entered an entire area of the judging criteria that is inherently subjective. And it sucks for Yan, but this is nothing but the result of how he chose to fight. Yan tends to kind of give away the first round. He uses, which is not to say he doesn't use it. But that round is not, he doesn't usually win that round. And it came back to bite him here. If he'd been more authoritative in that round, he wins. No ifs, ands, or buts. The fight itself was a little bit odd. Sterling did a pretty good job in the first round of using his kicks. Fair number of body kicks. One of the weird things. Yan, if we look at his targeting, was 50% to the head, 26% to the body, 22% to the legs. He got away from the leg kicks a little bit prematurely, I think, and they didn't quite seem to be having the same effect. Sterling's movement hindered that a lot. But that was one of the things he used to really kind of punish Sterling in the first fight that he couldn't use here. Yan was he was overswinging a lot. He came out a little bit hot, which is weird considering I said he just kind of gave the round away. But this is about methodology, not end result. He did not do his usual more kind of measured approach in that first round. He was looking to take Sterling's head off, and I think that cost him a fair bit. Sterling's cardio held up in no small part because he did not fight like he was shot out of a cannon. It also helps that, I mean, look, if you get 2 rounds where you spend almost 4 minutes on the guy's back, that just takes less energy. It's not you're not resting there, obviously, but it's not nearly as physically difficult as some of the other stuff you could be doing. I mean, Sterling's takedown efficiency overall was still poor. Like, he got 2 of 22. Turns out those two were enough to win the fight, but if we look at his takedowns, 0 for 2 in the first, 1 of 2 in the second, 1 of 4 in the third, 0 for 4 in the fourth, and then 0 for 10 in the fifth. I mean, that's a lot of energy he started expending down the stretch. Credit to him. His movement never fell off. He was able to, again, bank enough rounds to win the fight, and that's a perfectly valid way to win. After the fight, Sterling said he wants to fight TJ Dillashaw, which is the darkest timeline. Other people are probably going to be more interested in that fight than I am. I could not possibly care less about those two fighting each other. Put it like this. If Dillashaw is still operating at a high level relative to what he has shown in the past, that's a rough fight for Aljamain Sterling. Getting TJ Dillashaw down is a very difficult proposition. Dealing with a guy with his output is very difficult. He's got heavy hands. He's a very good wrestler himself. Now, Dillashaw, of course, I thought Dillashaw lost the fight with Corey Sandhagen. I've been open about that. But if he's slowed down as much as you kind of think he has, I might favor Sterling there, but that's not an easy fight. As far as Yan goes, after the fight, he said he wanted a rematch. He feels he won just fine. Again, I scored it for him, so I don't think he's in the wrong there. But they're not going to do a third immediate fight between these two guys. I mean, look, Dana White scored the fight for Yan. He disagreed with the decision, but they're not going to do it. They're not going to do that. Especially not with Dillashaw there, who the UFC really likes. What we're probably going to get is Yan. You might get Yan versus Merab Dvalishvili, which is Merab is a deeply flawed fighter, but his sheer determination and his utterly absurd motor make up for it. I would favor Yan in that fight, but that might be what we're kind of looking at here for Yan next. They're not going to do another fight between Yan and Aldo. There's no point. They're not going to do another fight between Yan and Sandhagen. Again, there's not really a point. Rob Font is fighting Marlon Vera soon, I believe. He could fight the winner of that. And then again, you got Merab sitting at 6. So yeah, he's gonna have to win another fight before he gets back to the belt. Unfortunate for him, but scoring that fight for Aljamain Sterling is a perfectly reasonable scorecard. I might disagree, but I am not, up in arms or anything over it. I can't be, based on how we have to score fights. I hate to bring this argument up, but I will just for the sake of comparatives. If we're scoring this on who won the fight in total, rather than round by round, we probably still have a split, but I think we split for Yan in that case rather than splitting for Sterling. But I say that purely as a matter, and I say that not to... I actually do think scoring fights as a whole rather than round by round is a better way to score MMA fights, personally, but either that or we need kind of an overhaul of the criteria for the 10-point must system, but that's a whole can of worms. So I say that just for the sake of acknowledging that depending on the criteria, I've brought this up before for other fights, but depending on the slightly different criteria, you can arrive at a different result, which is not surprising. Anyway, so those were our top 2 fights, title fights, both of them quite good. Sterling and Yan was not the most exciting fight in the world, but it was competitive. It was there was some drama. There was good technique from both guys. It was not a bad fight. And I mean, the main event was a bit too one-sided to be a great fight, but an absolute just clinic from Volkanovski. All right, next up, the fight of the night, deservedly so. Going on my fight of the year contender. I don't know where it'll wind up when it's all said and done, but Khamzat Chimaev defeats Gilbert Burns via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the boards. I need a caveat here. Doing it live, I was 29-28 Burns. That's somewhat marred by some technical issues that were had in the third round. I was not the only one who had these kind of issues, apparently. I'm never entirely sure whether or not it's me or the UFC, but a couple of my friends who I was not watching physically with, but I was watching at the same time as, noted that they were having issues, and one of them was Andrew, who's been on the show once or twice. He's in Canada, so whatever issues they were having, they kind of showed their head here. So I cannot stand fully behind scoring the third for Burns because I think I missed parts of it. That said, first round Chimaev, Burns was very, very game. The round swung heavily towards Chimaev near the end. He went southpaw and dropped Burns with a right. A really stiff jab, well timed. Got on top, kind of, pounded out the last little bit of the round. Second round to Burns. The second round is where things kind of started breaking down a little bit. Burns was able to, he clobbered Chimaev with a right hand. I mean, I don't know how Chimaev stayed upright. He then kind of knocked him off balance and dropped him. Burns gets the second. Third round is just a firefight, pretty much from start to finish. If you give Chimaev the third round, I am not arguing with you one iota. This was a wild, wild fight. Both men got bruised up and bloodied. Both men got cut up. Both men got hurt. I think one of the more interesting things that came out of this, and I don't quite know how much relevance to put on this, but this was the first time we've seen someone, and I know Chimaev does not train with Khabib, but this is the first time we've seen someone kind of with that mentality, that style, go up against someone with really, really top-shelf jiu-jitsu. And the end result was rather interesting. Chimaev was very averse to being inside the guard of Gilbert Burns. I think that was probably a smart decision on his part. Burns, to his credit, he brought in some guys who used the same style. I don't know who, but I know he brought some guys in. And he was very well prepared for some of the things that Chimaev does in the wrestling department. He was very good about quickly wall walking, about not letting Chimaev mount the legs, about not letting him get a control position. So very good stuff there. And again, Chimaev, one of the reasons I think we can't be too... this is an interesting point in the history of, what jiu-jitsu against the kind of, smash or smish. I'm holding off a little bit for a couple of reasons. One is that while Chimaev obviously is a very strong wrestler for MMA, he doesn't have the same overall grappling skills and credentials and whatnot that someone like an Islam Makhachev has. Makhachev is not just a strong wrestler. That man is a very good all-around grappler. And while Chimaev is a strong wrestler, and he's good about finding partial control positions to land damage from, he doesn't have the kind of pedigree that, again, Makhachev does or that Khabib did when it comes to what they're able to do on the ground in a more pure grappling kind of setting. So it is an interesting... I mean, it was always one of the things, like what happens to Khabib when he fights someone who's got a really killer jiu-jitsu game? And we never got to see it. Not really. I don't think it would have looked exactly like this, but this is something to keep in mind. credit. I want to give Gilbert Burns a ton of credit. Not only did he fight like an absolute dog, he went out of his way to request this fight. There's not a lot of guys in any other division sitting number 2 in the rankings who would fight number 11 at all, much less say, hey, I want to fight number 11. It's just real quick for the sake of my own amusement. Let's just go through. Okay, Kai Kara-France is currently number 2 at the flyweight division. You think he's calling up Sean Shelby and saying, or Mick Maynard, or whoever the matchmaker is for these guys. I know they're split. He's not calling up UFC brass and going, I want to fight Tim Elliott. TJ Dillashaw is not saying, I want to fight Frankie Edgar. Brian Ortega is not saying, I want to fight Sadiq Youssef. Dustin Poirier is not saying, I want to fight Arman Saryuki, and he is definitely not saying that. Not a knock on him. Jared Cannonier is not saying, give me Nasruddin Imavov. Yuri Prochazka is not calling out Nikita Krylov. And I'll end this at number with the heavyweights. Stipe Miocic is not banging the drum to fight Sergey Pavlovich. A very winnable fight for Stipe, but you get the point. But here we have number 2, Gilbert Burns, saying, yeah, Khamzat Chimaev, I want that fight. That deserves all kinds of credit that he's willing and able to do that. So I give him a lot of credit for that. Here's the other thing. This is more of a technical thing. Dude, Khamzat Chimaev is strong as an ox. Gilbert Burns tried to take him down a couple of times. Now, Gilbert Burns is not the world's greatest wrestler. But he does have good takedowns. He went 0 for 5. I mean, and he had a couple that had good starts. Like, he started pretty solid, and then Chimaev, with a bit of technique and just strength, stopped him cold. The size disparity was very apparent here. One of the other things I wanted to mention. Chimaev a lot bigger. Now, this is not going to put Chimaev into a position to argue for the next title shot, I don't think. The UFC, Dana White after the fact or this week had mentioned, we're looking at trying to make Chimaev versus Colby Covington. I don't hate that fight. That's going to be an odd one if they make it. For the following reasons. One, we saw Chimaev fade here. Now, some of that was just how these two fought at a crazy pace, and Chimaev's technique, especially striking, kind of broke down. And one of the benefits of proper technique is that it conserves energy, doing things in the most efficient way possible, rather than what feels right necessarily. It's a weird biomechanical thing. That your arm, when you throw a jab, right? Mechanically speaking, and efficiency-wise in some respects, straight out, straight back. That's what you're taught. That's what you're drilled. Straight out, straight back, straight out, straight back. What happens when people start doing it? They start, and I mean once they actually kind of, obviously not like day one guys, but even very, very good fighters, even professional fighters, what do they do with it? They wind it up before they throw it because it's generating a little bit of momentum. It feels stronger. And what happens after it lands? It does not come straight back. It dips and comes back. That's technically more... This is a pure physics construct, mind you. It is more efficient physics-wise to use the momentum and the energy that you have started going forward rather than stopping it and reversing. It's easier in some respects to go out and then let it circle back. That said, it does take a bit more energy overall, and you have the downside of doing it that way and leaving your head exposed. Now, again, you see professionals do this all the time because it once you get a little bit tired, some of your technique breaks down a little bit, which, depending on the specific stuff we're talking about, can actually exacerbate your tiredness. You swing an overhand right, it is more effort to swing it than to throw it straight. So Chimaev's technique broke down a little bit. His cardio faded a little bit. His defense, turns out, it's not terrible, but it's not great. Now, if you think I'm being too hard on the guy, these are just kind of my notes for this is the first time we've seen him in anything like this. The dude had been hit twice in his entire UFC career before this. Entire UFC career. He is hit twice. In this fight, he gets hit a total of 120 some odd times. So, he took a big step up in class, right? Like, Li Jingliang is a good fighter. I'm not trying to disparage that man at all. But there is a lot of difference between Li Jingliang and Gilbert Burns, and that was very, very apparent. Chimaev's also very young, so and there are some things that you only learn after you get the experience. It doesn't matter how much your coach tells you. It doesn't matter how much you train. There's just a difference when it's real, and there are some things that you only learn this way. So hopefully he will take the correct lessons and continue moving forward. I mentioned I don't think he's next for a title shot. But if he fights Colby, it'll be interesting because Colby pushes a murderous pace. If those two fight, first of all, it's going to be 5 rounds. I don't know if it will be. I don't know. It'll be a 5-round fight. It will have to be a 5-round fight, given what they're trying to set up coming off of it. That's the only way that works. So we're gonna have to see, Chimaev potentially over 5 rounds. Colby has a great chin. This doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to Covington, but that dude can take a punch. I mean, he took a lot of blows from Kamaru Usman, some of which would have sat down a lot of other people. That punch that Masvidal landed on him in the 4th round, I think it was, of their fight. You know how many people are sleeping after Masvidal lands that punch? Not Covington. So there's that. There's also the style in which Covington wrestles. I'll be very interested to see how Chimaev deals with that because he stopped Burns here again every time. Covington wrestles differently, and that would be an interesting thing to see play out. So, here's the thing about Chimaev. The last thing I'm going to say about him, I think, on this. This performance did not show that he's ready to fight for the belt right now or next. I think if he were to fight Kamaru Usman next, that would go poorly for him. I'm not saying he couldn't win, but he would be dealing with an uphill battle pretty much everywhere. But if you look at this performance and what he has done throughout the rest of his UFC run, he is probably going to be champion in the next 2 years, give or take. The guy in his 11th professional fight fought the number 2 contender. And, yeah, was pushed like he had never been pushed before. But won. We got the gut check from him that I kind of wanted to see. He'd been a freight train thus far. What's he do when he's not? What do you do when someone puts it on you? Because someone will. Turns out he responded pretty darn good. So, Again, next champion. I don't know. Maybe Usman does hold it for another couple of years, and we're having this discussion in 2024 or really late 2023. You give Khamzat Chimaev another 18 months to 2 years of development. Look, if they were to fight tomorrow, I'd pick Usman. 2 years from now, Usman being 2 years older, Khamzat being 2 years, older and better. Tell me that's not a Chimaev. Tell me that's not a situation wherein you would favor Chimaev. Evidence as it currently stands, obviously. Credit to Burns, who, despite I'm very rarely one of the guys who says that, someone's stock can rise in a loss. It can. I don't like discussing it in those terms because I think it's a bit of a cliche. One of the few times I think that he probably will not suffer for having the loss here because he gave the guy a tough fight. And you turn in one of the fights of the year, your stock tends to rise, usually whether you win or lose. You'd rather win, obviously, but it never hurts. So I don't know who he fights next, but serious credit to him for seeking out this fight and for turning in the performance that he did. A lot of people would have crumbled, and he didn't. So credit to him. All right, the rest of these should be a bit quicker. Mackenzie Dern defeats Tecia Torres via split decision, 29-28. 29-28 for either woman is perfectly defensible. I think the first round is the swing round on this one. I can't remember if it was the first or third that I thought was the swing. The only truly dominant round is the second, where Dern jumps standing guard, uses a Kimura attack to force Torres down, transitions that into sort of an armbar, but Torres defends that. She gets stuck kind of looking for, kind of sweep is it? There's too many different sweeps. I think I heard it referred to as a flower sweep. Again, whether that's just different nomenclature depending on who's teaching you, I couldn't tell you. Winds up inverting for a leg lock. The knee bar gets pretty close. Torres is able to defend that enough, and then Dern goes for a toe hold. Like the second round is a great performance from Dern. I think the third round went to. I have to look at which round was the swing round on the official scorecards. Thanks. Let me do that real fast. Yeah, the first round was officially the swing round. Okay. Which was kind of my thought doing it live. I just wanted to confirm that. Third round for Torres, not terribly controversial there. First round, I gave it to Torres live, and Torres has a really good first 2 minutes. She is moving well, she's darting, she's intercepting Dern because Dern's always attacking on a straight line. There's a lot that's really good about the first half or so of that round for Tecia Torres. I mean, great stuff. The second half is where things fall apart for her a little bit. Her movement isn't quite as on point as it used to be, and she starts getting hit by Dern a bit more often. And that entire first round, Dern's just coming forward the whole time. So if you wanted to, again, you could give that first round to either of them. If all you do is watch the first 2 minutes, there's no argument that it should be Torres. When you take the round in totality, it's a little bit less clear. Is it 29-28 for either woman is perfectly defensible. I'm not up in arms over that either way. Good win for, pretty good win for Mackenzie Dern, all things considered. So, I don't know. After the fight, she said she would like to fight either the winner of Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Zhang Weili 2, maybe the loser of Esparza versus Rose Namajunas and Carla Esparza, or the other fight she mentioned, the winner of one of these upcoming fights, I think. Look. I don't think it was Lemos and Andrade. Forgive me, I forget who it was. She had like 3 different possibilities, all of which I think are perfectly legitimate. So, yeah, not a bad fight. Kicking off the main card, Mark Madsen defeated Vince Pichel via unanimous decision. 230-27s, 129-28. The 30-27's a little bit iffy. Pichel should have had that second round, I think it was. Yeah. Look, I don't object to Madsen winning. He clearly won the first and third. I don't think he won the second. Just my 2 cents on that. Not a bad fight. Madsen's cardio held up a lot better than it had before. So, definitely an improvement there. Had some rough periods in the striking. When the strikes really start flowing is when he kind of locks up a little bit. Pichel had a serious combination that he unloaded in the second round. So, something to work on. The reaction to getting hit. One of the things about Sterling, actually, and when he fought Yan. When Yan would land, Sterling reacted badly. I don't know if that was just a thing for this camp or in that moment or what, but Sterling's he does not have a history of reacting well to firefights. Now he fights in a way that kind of minimizes that, but it's definitely something to pay attention to. That's it wasn't a bad fight, but okay. As for the prelims, Ian Gary defeated Darian Weeks via unanimous decision, 230-27s and a 29-28. Commentary was hilariously in the bag for Gary here. The 30-27s for Gary are bad scorecards. Bare minimum, Weeks should have had the first. You want to argue Gary the second and third? I'm sympathetic to the argument. I think I scored it for Weeks doing it live, which again I'm not sure I'd completely stand behind that. Not great stuff out of Gary. Anthony Hernandez defeated Josh Fremd via unanimous decision, 230-27s, 129-28. Again, the 30-27's a little bit. I think Fremd had. I forget which round I gave him. There was one of them that I thought he won. Hernandez a little bit overly committed to working out of the assassin position, which is it's a variation of it's Ben Askren calls it the assassin. It's a folk style ride. And in MMA, in folk style wrestling, it's very good because you can use the position to roll someone from what in jiu-jitsu would be the turtle to their back and pin them. If you're in MMA, it's okay for rolling them over, but it's better for setting up the seated arm triangle, which is what I call that. It's a guillotine, but the arm with the arm in, but instead of the arm being across the body, it's on the same side as the head that's trapped. So you get the same kind of arm triangle compression just from the guillotine front headlock. John Danaher calls it the seated arm triangle. For the sake of ease, that's what I refer to it as. But you can set up that. You can set up an anaconda choke from there very nicely. And look, man, you tap Rodolfo Vieja with something out of that sequence, you are justified in living and dying by it. 1,000,000%. But Fremd was well schooled in that position, and he had an answer for it every time. So, good for him. The pace got to Fremd first, and then it started getting to Hernandez. Better striker was Fremd, but his overall grappling was just not quite ready for what Hernandez was bringing to him. Good win for Hernandez. Raquel Pennington defeated Aspen Ladd via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. Ladd in her corner looked surprised after this. I don't know why they were. Uh, Fight kind of sucked. Mike Malott defeated, or Mallet, I think he prefers Mallet, defeated Mickey Gall via TKO 341 of the first. A lot of decisions last night. Um, Gall gets a little bit aggressive coming in on a shifting punch. He shifts into southpaw. Doesn't quite mind his new defensive responsibilities, and Mallet just face plants him with a left hook. Solid performance out of Mallet. Yeah, and to Gall's credit, he fought well for a big chunk of this. I said this before. I think last week in particular. Him getting into the UFC as early as he did, I'm sure it's more beneficial to him financially, but if we're talking skills-wise, that did not do him any favors. And on the early prelims, Alexei Oleinik gets career win number 60 via scarf hold, chest compressor slash neck crank over Jared Vandera, 339 of the first. Typical Alexei Oleinik fight. If you've seen one, you've kind of seen them all, but they're fun enough. Oleinik is one of the few guys who really knows how to use the Kesagatame position. The compressor, the scarf hold, the neck crank in particular. You don't see it submit a lot of lighter guys. And I'm not sure if this is a chicken or an egg thing. Whether people at, say, lightweight, I'm just going to say lightweight for example, whether people at lightweight don't use it because they know they won't get a tap with it, or if they just kind of think they won't, so they don't even attempt it, and you just get this weird kind of circular logic. You don't see it work outside of heavyweight all that often. And you just see it some in, there are some women's fights. This is not to diminish anyone doing it at heavyweight or whatnot. You work within the physical realities of your opponent. If your opponent's a heavier guy and you can compress things and get them to tap out, do it. Why do Americanas work on heavyweights when they don't work on lighter weight guys? There's just more material there. Things are a little bit less flexible, so the certain locks work better. That doesn't mean that the heavyweights suck necessarily. It just means we're dealing with physical realities. So, that said, it is a very heavyweight move. But the point there is Oleinik is one of the few guys who knows how to use the scarfold position to his advantage, and it's a good position. A lot of judo guys are very good at it because you can pin in judo. It's a 10 count instead of a 3 count, but you can pin, and that's a good place to pin from. Catch wrestlers will use this position a lot. That's why Josh Barnett loves it. I mean, that's what he tapped out Dean Lister with, was the same hold. So it's a good position that I think gets overlooked a lot in contemporary MMA. I don't think Alexei Oleinik is going to be the catalyst for a renaissance of the Kesagatame, but it is something that I think more guys should give a look to if you want to find a platform to work out from. It's not the worst. Piero Rodriguez, who is from Venezuela, so I apologize for mispronouncing her name last week, defeated Kay Hansen via unanimous decision, 29-28. I don't have anything to say there. Hansen missed weight, not good, then lost, even worse. And kicking everything off, Julio Arce defeated Daniel Santos via unanimous decision, 230-27 to 129-28. Arce missed weight. He weighed 165.5, so half a pound over the non-title allowance. Minor calibration issue could have been all that was. If you looked at his weigh-in, sometimes when you watch a guy weigh in, you kind of go, did you really try? Arce looked like he gave that every effort. So I'm not a fan of guys missing weight. This is the first time he's ever done so, and as I've mentioned, given the chaos of the universe, everyone kind of gets one. But better have that dialed in next time. That said, he looked great. He fought really well. A lot of movement, sniping at distance, solid calf kicks. Santos plodded forward and just kind of got chewed up. I even I disagree with the guy who gave Santos a round. This was really good stuff from Arce, so kudos to him. All right, your bonuses, your fight of the night, I mentioned it already. Gilbert Burns and Khamzat Chimaev, 1,000,000% deserved. Performances of the night went to Alexander Volkanovski and Alexei Oleinik. Can't really argue with that. You only had one other finish. And the UFC tends to reserve their performances for finishes. Not always, but tends to. So, yeah, no objection to any of that. Yeah, Volkanovski, man. Looks like $1,000,000. This was the first time we got the new crypto bonus. God. Okay. A couple of things. One, Dana White at the post-fight presser said, "I'm gonna give Gilbert Burns his win bonus." You could do that every time, and the only thing stopping them from doing that is greed. And bear in mind, if you ask me about my economic philosophies, I'm a capitalist. I am. I don't object to. So I say that just to say, if even me, who again, I'm kind of yay capitalism, all things considered, is sitting here going, you're being a bit greedy. I mean, what was the dividend pay? I think there was like a bonus or they did like, I can't remember if it was bonuses or just their dividend payouts or something along those lines. Forgive me. But Ari Emanuel, who owns Endeavor, which again owns the UFC, was given like a $300 million bonus. Again, it's either a bonus or it's something to that effect. Just so everyone understands, that's more than the UFC paid its fighters in total for the last like 3 to 5 years combined. And let me be clear about something. I'm not objecting to that man making a lot of money for owning a company that is successful. When you're getting that kind of disparity, though, is when you're fomenting resentment, and all you're doing is making your own life more difficult. Just my takeaway. Anyway, that is to lead into our new, for pay-per-view at least, set of bonuses. Crypto.com, which does not pay the fighters anything. The fighters see not a red cent of their logo being plastered across the chest of their fight kits, for the record. And Crypto is paying a fair amount of money to be there. Fighters? Nope. They have a new thing now where during the event or immediately after it, viewers can vote up to 3 times per pay-per-view on bonuses. And at the end, the 3 winners of this popularity contest get bonuses paid in Bitcoin, ranging in so when I say how much they win, this is again however much of Bitcoin you could buy for that in US dollars at whatever the current market rate for it is. Crypto, man. I'm going to say this once. This is all I'm going to say about cryptocurrency at the moment. It's not a currency. You can't buy anything with it. I cannot take whatever coin, whatever stupid name you want to attach to it, and use it to fill up my car. All crypto is at the moment is a wildly unregulated securities market. That's all it is. That's all I'm saying on it. Moving on. So, again, whoever wins this popularity contest, there's first, second, and third places. They are paid $30,000, $20,000, and $10,000 respectively. So, and this also only applies to pay-per-view. So if you're a popular enough fighter and happen to be featured on pay-per-view, only for pay-per-view cards. Let me specify this. Pay-per-view events. You do not have to be on the pay-per-view portion of the card to win. Anyone from the preliminary card is eligible to be voted on. You'd have to do something pretty special on the prelims, I think, to make a dent. But that does need to be acknowledged. It is not only on the main people. It is not only eligible to people on the main card of the pay-per-view, but you do have to be on a pay-per-view event. The next couple of weeks are, again, fight nights. There will be no Crypto.com fan bonuses. But your winners for this one, predictably, first place, Khamzat Chimaev. Second place, Alexander Volkanovski. Third place, Petr Yan. So those three gentlemen were paid respectively in Bitcoin, $30,000, $20,000, and $10,000. Don't know what they want to do with that, if anything, but they've got it. So that was UFC 273. I would like to thank very much any and all of you that followed along with my live coverage. Any and all of you that read the report after the fact. That's all available in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com right now. You can go read that to get my round-by-round scoring and clips of the finishes, such as they were. Okay, moving on. This coming week, again, thank you again. UFC this coming week, UFC on ESPN Plus 64. We got a card. I don't think we have a full bout order yet, so I apologize. Some of these are not in order. Main event, a rematch between Vicente Luque and Belal Muhammad. These two fought how long ago? They fought back in 2016. I believe it was Muhammad's UFC debut or his second fight. It was his third fight in the UFC. And Luque knocked Belal Muhammad out in a minute and 20 seconds. It is, to date, the only stoppage loss of Muhammad's career. So there's that. Luque is on a great run. I mean, I've said this before about Vicente Luque. That man does not get the respect he deserves. I mean, he had one setback in his UFC debut to a guy no longer with the promotion. Since then, he lost to Leon Edwards, fighting for the belt, and Stephen Thompson fought for the belt twice. And arguably should have won the second one, my opinion. He's currently on a 4-fight winning streak. He's finished all of them. That's Nico Price, Randy Brown, Tyron Woodley, and Michael Chiesa. I mean, he's on a roll. Then you've got Muhammad, who is also on a roll. Muhammad hasn't lost since he fought Jeff Neal in 2019. Since then, he's beaten Curtis Millender, Takashi Sato, Lyman Good, Diego Lima, the no contest with Leon Edwards, beat Damian Maia, and most recently beat Stephen Thompson. So if you wish to play MMA math, we should pick Belal Muhammad here, except he's already lost to the guy he's fighting, so MMA math goes out the window, because MMA math is kind of a joke. I'm looking forward to this fight, believe it or not. This is a good fight. It was a good fight the first time they made it when they were both younger prospects. Now they're both contenders. Really good fight. Over 5 rounds is kind of the big consideration here for me. Luque's a bit more of a finish threat. Luque's a bit more well-rounded. Muhammad's a better wrestler. I'm going to lean towards Luque just a little bit. Could be very wrong about that. If Luque decides to brawl with Muhammad, that will go badly. Luque's boxing is not very good. His overall striking is good. I mean, I really wish to clarify this. Luque's overall level of striking is pretty good. When he gets just into boxing, it's not quite the level of the rest of his stuff. So if Muhammad can kind of induce a lot of punching exchanges, that will be to Muhammad's credit. And I think that will play well for him. I expect Muhammad to try and grind this out. That's what he usually does. I mean, before the eye poke when he fought Leon Edwards, people forget this. Leon Edwards beat the crap out of Belal Muhammad for that first round. I mean, that was not terribly close. Now, Leon Edwards is very good, and obviously Muhammad has rebounded since then. But that gets forgotten because of the eye poke. But that fight up until then was not terribly competitive. So I'm gonna lean towards Luque, but this is a good fight. Could go either way. All right. Everything else about this, I'm not sure the bout order listed here is correct. So if it's not, I apologize. Going by what they've released. We have a featherweight fight between Pat Sabatini and TJ Laramie. I don't have a lot of hesitation picking Sabatini here. Laramie had a pretty good UFC debut, but Sabatini is a smothering guy. I'm looking forward to this one. Elizeu Zalescu dos Santos against Munir Lazzez. Lazzez is a really good striker. Dos Santos will be better all around. I mean, Dos Santos has had some really good wins, had some really good runs in the UFC. Um, I just, I think he's on. I think he is past his peak. I might be wrong, but that's my hunch. So I'm still gonna lean towards him. I think his overall game will wind up being a bit much for Lazzez to deal with, but be on the lookout for this one. Dos Santos he's kind of been teetering on that precipice for his last couple of fights. Marina Bueno Silva against Wu Yanan. Have a quick look at this. Yeah, she's on a rough stretch. I mean, she's only got one win in the UFC. Uh, Lost her bantamweight, who returned to bantamweight about a little over a year ago. Uh, Silva, on the other hand, I mean, this is kind of win or go home for both of these ladies. Silva only has one win in the UFC. She kind of, I'm gonna lean towards Silva, I suppose. I mean, kind of flip a coin here. Now that's all we have listed for the main card. I'm going to make a couple of assumptions about the fights that don't have a specific order yet. I'm going to assume that William Knight and Devin Clark is going to be somewhere on the main card because it's a heavyweight fight and there's already a heavyweight fight on the prelims, and we must make everyone who watches both halves of these things suffer. Clark lost his last two. This is Clark's heavyweight debut. Rather, his return to it. No, this is his heavyweight debut. I think he was light heavyweight, had a middleweight fight, and then came back up to light heavyweight. I believe it's William Knight's heavyweight debut as well. This is his return to heavyweight. He's not fought at heavyweight in the UFC, apart from when he missed weight horribly for his last fight when he fought Maxim Grishin. Remember that? He weighed 218 pounds. The single biggest weight miss in UFC history. So he's up at heavyweight now, which is a fair... You miss weight by, what, 13 pounds? You're missing weight by more than the weight of a newborn human child. Yeah, move up. Oh, man. I assume that's going to be on the main card. I'm gonna pick Clark. I don't care. I'm also going to assume that Miguel Baeza and Andre Fialho will be on the main card. You know what? I feel okay assuming Knight and Clark. Let me go to the prelims and then I'll read the stuff that doesn't have a bout order, and we'll do it that way. So prelims, lightweight, Rafa Garcia and Jesse Ronson. It's not the worst fight in the world. Probably lean towards Ronson. How did that go? Ronson's been out for a while. He had a failed drug test. I'm going to go with Ronson, but yeah. Heavyweight, Chris Barnett and Martin Bidet. Go with Beast Boy, why not? Maybe he'll throw another wheel kick and knock somebody out with it. Still can't believe he hit that, man. More annoyed that his spinning heel kick is better than mine. But that's because my hips are messed up more than anything. And I'm probably lazier than he is. Women's strawweight, Estela Nunes and Sam Hughes. He's kind of in need of a win. Badly in need of a win. She's not won in the UFC yet. Look up Ms. Nunes real fast. Anytime someone's 0-3 in the UFC, I have to double check their opponent. What do we have here? Is this not listed here? There you are. She is 6-2. Oh, she had a UFC. Yeah, she lost to Ariane Carnelose. I vaguely remember that fight. I'm going to pick Hughes, and I'm just prepared to be very, very wrong. And a bantamweight fight between Alatong Hele. Hele Alatong. I think it's Alatong Hele. He's like from Tibet, and they have weird naming conventions. I don't mean that in a xenophobic way. I mean, it's a little bit weird. Oh, is he from Mongolia? Where the heck is he from? I mean, he represents China officially, but depending on which part of China, China being a very large country. Where's Rongju fights out of Tibet? I don't know. Anyway, so Alatong is coming off of a draw that he did to himself after he got a point deducted because he wouldn't stop grabbing the fence. Kroom has had a rough go of it in the UFC. No contest with Roosevelt Roberts. Then he lost to Alex Caceres and Brian Kelleher. I mean, those guys are both capable UFC caliber fighters. I'm gonna lean towards Kroom, believe it or not. I think Hele is gonna struggle with his wrestling. Just a thought. All right, again, as for the stuff that's announced, but we don't really have a bout order. Drakkar Klose and Brandon Jenkins. Pretty okay picking Klose. I mentioned this already. Miguel Baeza and Andre Fialho. Fialho, he had lost his UFC debut. He stepped in on somewhat short notice to fight Michel Pereira, but he acquitted himself very well in that fight. I was impressed. And Baeza, for a guy that, 2 years ago looked to be the next big thing, he really needs to get it together. He took a step up in competition to fight Santiago Ponzinibbio and did well in the first round and then lost the next two. Did pretty good against Chaos Williams for a while before he got caught in the third round. He's got a lot of ability, but the pieces all have to fit together, and I don't think they quite do for him yet. This is a tougher pick than I thought. I'm going to pick Fialho and just kind of hope I'm wrong because I think Baeza still has a lot of upside. Middleweight, Kyle Baralho and Gadzi. Omar Gadziev? Omar Gadziev? I'm just going to mispronounce that guy's name no matter what I try until I see it, until I hear someone else do it. Baralho is making his debut, I believe. Yes. Had a couple of wins on the Contender Series to get here. On a good winning streak, actually. He had a no contest in 18. Other than that, his only loss was in 2015. Omar Gadziev. He's undefeated, 13-0. Also has a win on the Contender Series. I think you all know my kind of joking rule of thumb at this point. I pick Russians to beat Brazilians. In all honesty, I don't know enough about either guy to make an informed prediction, so that's kind of That's one of my amusing personal breakpoints. If I don't have actual evidence one way or the other. Um, I don't know what my lifetime average is on that one. That's been my deciding factor or not. Hmm. Women's bantamweight. Let's see, Lena Landsberg and Pani Kianzad. Oof, that's probably not going to be good. Probably, I don't know, lean towards Kian. Flip a coin. I genuinely don't know. They're both just kind of. They both just kind of take up space. Landsberg coming off of a loss to Sarah McMahon. Landsberg's been with the UFC since 2016. And in that time has amassed a, what, 4-4? Yeah, she's 4-4. Whereas Kianzad lost to Raquel Pennington in her last fight. She's 4-2 overall in the UFC. Yeah, sure, Kianzad. And Jordan Levitt versus Trey Ogden. Jordan Levitt has some abilities, but boy is he a bit gimmicky, and he doesn't really flow as a fighter, right? I mean, he got a really nice inverted triangle choke in his last fight. The first straight inverted triangle choke to win a fight. Put Matt Sale to sleep with it. But there's a lot of refinement that needs to go on with him, and that's not the worst thing in the world. He's only 26. And he fights out of a good camp. He's with Syndicate at the moment, I think. They're a very, very, uh, they're a solid camp, So that. So I'm gonna pick him here, but he's also kind of shown maybe a little. Again, just there's a lot of reasons you might be willing to pick against him, and his opponent. Quick look at Mr. Ogden. He is 15-4, more experienced. A 3-fight winning streak. And again, if you want to pick against Levitt, I can easily understand why you would be inclined to do so. But that's the card as it stands, and there's a bunch of those that have to get in the official bout order. I will be covering it this Saturday in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com, so if you are so inclined, please do stop by and say hello. I always appreciate all of the support that you're able to give me that way. Thank you very, very much. All right. As far as news goes, some fights have kind of been announced / moved around. The big one, the UFC announced they're targeting for UFC 275, the rematch of maybe the best women's MMA fight ever. I think it is. Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Zhang Weili 2. And UFC 275 currently scheduled for June 11th to take place in Kallang, Singapore. They are moving to the back door of One Championship, even though I'm fairly sure they don't know who that is. Look, let me just, for the record, read off the fights we have at the moment, expected or whatnot for that card. Glover Teixeira and Yuri Prochazka. Valentina Shevchenko versus Tayla Santos. And Robert Whittaker versus Marvin Vettori. You toss in Joanna Zhang 2. Please make that 5 rounds, by the way. Just throwing it out there, please. You throw that in to cap off again Whittaker and Vettori. You might need one other fight for the main card. I mean, you could throw pretty much anything. I don't think it matters what you put as the other fight on the main card on that at that point. Like, that's a really good card. Teixeira and Prochazka is... That's going to be crazy. I mean, Yuri Prochazka can only be in crazy fights, but Glover's not adverse to bringing the crazy. Valentina and Taila Santos is more competitive than people are going to give it credit for because we're just used to Valentina bulldozing everyone. To be abundantly clear, I favor her quite heavily. But I think Santos is maybe her most capable challenger in a while. Let me double check that. She fought recently. She's better than Lauren Murphy. I would argue better than Jennifer Maia. Okay, Andrade. Okay, not Andrade. Jessica Andrade, better. Chukagian. Chukagian's got a good. Chukagian has a very good overall like winning track record, but she's. I mean, that fight went the way it went for a reason. Point being, I think Santos is probably going to be overlooked. Uh, and she's better than that. Still favor Shevchenko walking away in a lot of respects. If we're talking about my predictions. But Santos she's going to be poised to overperform relative to expectations. And Whitaker and Vettori, I mean, that's a good fight. It's just a good fight. So, yeah, 275 is shaping up nicely. See, do we have anything else? 274 has been. I don't think I talked about this a lot before, but for UFC 274, we currently have two title fights. Gaethje and Oliveira. Yes. The rematch between Rose Namajunas and Carla Esparza. I'm not objecting. Lightweight fight was added to that. Michael Chandler and Tony Ferguson. This was added a little bit ago, but I didn't talk about it when it was announced. It's a great fight. Donald Cerrone and Joe Lozon's on that card. So 274 is coming up soon, and that's a really good card. Was there any others that we had kind of finalized here? The upcoming Font and Vera card. I mean that's a good fight. Rob Font and Marlon Vera is a good fight. The rest of that card's a little bit lackluster, but that had a change. Justin Taffa was supposed to fight Jake Collier, and Taffa fell out. Now we get Jake Collier versus Andrei Arlovsky. I can't help but laugh, man. I have to laugh. I just have to laugh. Everything after May 7th at the moment is a little bit TBD. So like Fight Night 209. I know we've got some announced bouts. I think the main event's going to be Jan Blachowicz and Alexander Rakic. Fine enough light heavyweight fight. Some decent enough fights there. Actually, now that I look at it, we just don't have a venue. I assume the Apex. I think the same thing for the card on the 21st. Yeah, we don't have a main event for that. I think they had penciled in the fight between Alexander Gustafsson and Ben Rothwell, then Rothwell got cut. And Gustafsson lobbied for Ovince St. Preux, despite Ovince St. Preux fighting Mauricio Shogun Rua at UFC 274. I mean, that's a rematch nobody wants, but... again, there's a few that still need to be fleshed out, but we've seen some of the 275 card got a little bit more stacked. Okay, that is the news that I have at the moment, so I'm going to check Twitter and Facebook for questions or breaking news, and if there's nothing, we will go into plugs and get out of here. Alright, nope. So, let's get into plugs. My usual spate of professional wrestling coverage, AEW's Dark Elevation on Monday, MLW's whatever they're releasing on Thursday, and WWE SmackDown on Friday. The post-WrestleMania slump is real. We're only 1 week out, but yeesh. AEW didn't exactly have a great event, MLW didn't have a great, and theirs was taped. And then SmackDown was, not very good. Not so good. And, of course, my report for UFC 273 is up, if you're interested. And coverage for the UFC event this Saturday. I will also be, last week there was also a Damn You Hollywood, which is my movie review podcast over on the W2M network, where we discussed Morbius. Yeah. Not a good movie. Not a good movie. Tune in to listen to myself, Mark Radlich, and Pat Mullen talk about all the things we all the issues we had with it. This week will be a review for Sonic the Hedgehog 2. That's going to be myself, Mark, and Alexis. Look. Yes. That's me, Mark Radulich, and Alexis Haina. We'll be talking Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I enjoyed the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie, so sue me. So I'm kind of looking forward to this one. The week after that will be the Damn You Hollywood for Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of Dumbledore. That is a spin-off IP that has lost its way in a big way. Actually, I didn't hate the first Fantastic Beasts movie, but The Crimes of Grindelwald was a crime against cinema, and I'm hoping Mads Mikkelsen is awesome because I love Mads Mikkelsen. Then Damn You Hollywood will round out the month of April with The Northman on the 26th. So if you're interested in my thoughts in movies, please give Damn You Hollywood a listen wherever you're listening to this. You can type Damn You Hollywood into your search engine, and I'm sure you'll find me. All right. Thank you all very, very much again for your continued support, for your listening, for sharing the show with your friends if you think they're interested in it. So I appreciate you guys a whole lot. Until next time, stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave.